Welcome to the School Zone, the show all about your local school districts here in the White Mountains. I'm your host, John Larsen. Today we have Show Low Unified School District Superintendent Shad Housley and the high school principal, Ben Marchant. Welcome to the show. Glad you guys are here. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you coming. Today we're going to talk about the newly adopted 4-day school week calendar for the Show Low School District. Mr. Housley, if you would, I'd like to get you guys to introduce yourselves, tell our folks here who you are and a little bit about yourself, please. Mr. Housley, we'll start with you and then Mr. Marchant.
Great. I'm Shad Housley. I'm the superintendent. This is my 4th year as the superintendent of Show Low Schools, and we're excited for the things that are happening in our school district, and thanks for having us here to discuss a little bit about this calendar.
Absolutely. Mr. Marchant.
Yeah, I'm Ben Marchant. I'm the principal at Show Low High School. I'm in my 2nd year now as the principal. I was the assistant principal for 4 years before that and taught math and coached soccer and stuff here before that. So thanks for having us.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Housley, I'll start with you. Would you just give us a little background on what led the district to entertain the idea of a calendar change, specifically to the 4-day. Why did we decide to even look at that, and tell us about the process?
Sure. There are a lot of different factors, but typically what happens in a given school year, about November, I take the opportunity to start to explore with the board some different calendar options, and up until this point there's been the requirement to have about a 180-day school year, and some other components in there. In the early 2000s it was 175, and then there were some changes to make it to 180 with Proposition 301. Since that point there's been some other changes, and most recently some changes to the instructional hours for junior high, specifically 7th and 8th graders, in the last 2 legislative sessions. And then there were some things that opened up as far as the number of days. So schools can have either a 4-day or a 5-day option in their calendars. And so when we began that discussion in November, there was some feelings on the part of the board as well as part of community members for us to begin to explore some other alternatives. And so we went about that process, and I brought back to the board early on 4 calendar options, 2 that were 4-day and 2 that were 5-day. And the board reviewed those and kind of talked about pros and cons and how we might make one or the other work. Regardless of what would happen, we would have had each of our calendars had less than 180 days in the option, which has come because of some changes in the state legislation. But we then began to explore those options a little bit more. We held public meetings in fact, during the month of January. We continue to have board work sessions to discuss the different options, and my administrative team took it upon ourselves in our meetings to explore the pros and cons of each of them, really trying to flesh out anything that might be a perceived obstacle or in reality an obstacle. That brought us to this last board meeting on Thursday, where we held another public meeting and got feedback from the public on both on the options, a 4-day or a 5-day option. We also conducted a survey where we had about 850 respondents who shared feedback with the board, and all of this kind of proved to bring us to the point of making the decision last Thursday, which the board did, and approved a 4-day calendar for students, with the teachers continuing to work on that 5th day.
So originally we started out with 4 calendars. Through the process of the meetings that were held, the 4 different meetings where the public could come, and then the feedback also via the surveys that were made available to the public, we pared it down to 2, a 5-day and a 4-day, and then at the meeting last week, or the February meeting anyway, we had a lot of feedback, a lot of people speak up. We had some administrators speak up, parents, teachers, and we even had some kids come up and speak, which I thought was really great, that they felt like they could be a part of the process.
Yeah.
I was really appreciative of them doing that. And between all of the feedback, the data that you got back, what was the response? It was pretty overwhelming, wasn't it, for one of the choices?
Specifically in the survey feedback, about 80% of the respondents, they had a choice. They had to choose which calendar they preferred and which one they least preferred, and the preference, about 80% of the feedback was to go to a 4-day option. That was also similar as far as the balance of those who spoke out at other public meetings that we had. So it was right in line with what we were doing, and ultimately the board approved a 4-day calendar that was the best of the 2 4-day options kind of blended together to create what we have now. So
can you tell us from that calendar, what are we looking at? Start dates? I don't know if you want to give an idea of the various breaks that happen during that calendar, and then the end date, which I assume the end date will be the same as graduation.
Yes.
Will be that day. Okay.
Yeah, so when you look at the 4-day week as far as a regular calendar, inside the beginning and end dates, things look a lot the same other than we have a 4-day week for students. One thing that the public really shared with us, and a lot of the feedback were they wanted school to start a little bit later in August to take advantage of the climate of the White Mountains and the things that it affords us living here. And so you'll see us August 17th start. Whereas if we were in our traditional calendar, we would have been closer to like the 13th, between the 10th and the 13th as a start rather than where we are now. So you'll see a 17th start. Then you'll see the regular breaks, the Labor Days, the fall breaks, the spring breaks, the Christmas breaks are all the normal like you would see in our regular Thanksgiving. The end date is May 27th, and that'll be the last day for students and also graduation, which is a Thursday this year versus a Friday in different years. So as you go through the calendar, that's pretty much what you see different other than 4 days versus 5.
So are we going to see fewer? I want to ask this correctly. I want the people to know that academically we're not going any fewer hours. The kids are still going to be able to see the same amount of desk time or instruction time that they would in the 5-day. How that works? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So currently, we're going to have the same instructional day Monday through Thursday. There is going to be a reduction in time because we're not going Fridays, obviously, and we're not going to add that on. State law.
But that'll also pair with. You were just going to say what I was going to. It's going to pair with the state.
Yeah, it allows us to meet. Remember, I shared earlier about 7th and 8th grade, the number of hours in a year has been reduced. And so within the 4-day in our current structure of time, maybe a little bit 5 or 10 minutes one side, 15 minutes, but we're going to be right in line with where we need to be with the state to meet that in a 4-day option. We really feel like going to this, what we've done is we wanted to do 2 things: build in professional time so teachers can make professional decisions to become stronger with instruction during those 4 days, where right now they don't have the ability to do that outside of the regular workday. And then we don't want to sacrifice student achievement. So those 2 things were the premise of the decision. We feel like if we get better planning, more opportunities to really look at what students need, and then have that play out in the classroom, that we'll be able to meet those 2 things: professional time and academic achievements.
Great. Mr. Marchant, this is where you come in.
Okay.
I know we've got the various sites. I would love to have had all the principals here to give us an idea of what they're looking at, but obviously we can't have everybody on.
We have 2 desks.
Yeah.
Or 2 chairs here.
So I'm interested. I want to know what your part of the process. I know Mr. Housley says that he met with staff and administration. How did that work for you?
Yeah, so So that piece that you mentioned was the most important from our end. He came by, I know you kind of just gave that rundown of how there was 4 calendars. That wasn't the beginning. There was actually a beginning before that. Shad had come by our sites and had been talking with administrators regularly, like he mentioned. But he had come by every site, and he came by the high school at one point during lunch, and we spent all lunch hour. I opened it up to any staff who had input on this and wanted to attend. I think we had about, I don't know, 10 or so teachers and staff members who attended this. And then I shared those names out with the rest of the staff to let them know, hey, these are the people who will be representing your voice. And so at that time, there wasn't any calendars. It was free. Okay, what do you guys need? What are your biggest needs as a high school, as staff, as a parapro, as a teacher, as a principal? What are the main needs that you guys see coming up in the future based off of a calendar? And he shared with them why we're even discussing this with those rules and legislation that had been adjusted to not require the 180 mark anymore. And there was a lot of really good feedback that happened in that meeting. It seemed as though the high school teachers were all pretty much on the same page, even at that time, in terms of what they were looking for. And so then taking that information, Shad and his team was able to put together the 4 options and then send out the surveys and do all the rest. And so pretty much from there, at the high school level, I don't want to speak for the other principals, but I know at the high school level, most of the work that we've done now is just kind of groundwork preparation. We didn't want to necessarily jump forth with strong opinions one way or another. I know I personally felt that way. I didn't want to, jump really heavy in one way just in case there were needs elsewhere in the district or in the community that leaned the other way. And so we just prepared ourselves for what we would need to do as a high school to still accomplish our goals and things that we had shared going in, no matter what calendar was chosen. And I actually remember, it was several years back, we had looked over things similar to this. We'd looked at new calendars, possible 4-day options, things like that. And even back at that time, I was sharing with the staff that, look, a calendar is just a calendar. A schedule is just a schedule. At the end of the day, the students got to be there working hard, willing to learn. The teachers have to be, putting in the time. And so obviously a calendar and a schedule can make those things easier or provide, the right opportunities for learning. But at the end of the day, calendar is just a calendar, and we need to do what we need to do to make it happen. So we've kind of just done the groundwork, and now for the high school, now is when the real fun begins. Now it's voted through. We've got it. It's February. We haven't set out. We've got everything kind of like waiting in the starting blocks right now in terms of sending out stuff for our course offerings and what sort of programs students are going to look to get involved in, because things like this, they do affect what it looks like for a student that may be looking to do NAVIT, or a senior that only needs a certain amount of classes, or students looking to do dual enrollment and stuff. Now that the minutes are going to be a little bit different because we're working on a 4-day calendar of minutes, so we have to now plan to share exactly what that looks like for all these students, so they know, okay, if I'm going to do NAVIT, then that means I'm going to need to take X amount of classes at the high school still, and so it impacts things like that. So I would anticipate that certainly in the March board meeting, we'll be coming forth with more details and refined on what it looks like for for these programs and these offerings. But yeah, pretty much up until this point, we've just been kind of waiting. And now that we've got the green light, we've already got teams formed and ready to go and attack what the Fridays look like. I've got teams looking at what eligibility is going to look like. Obviously, we're looking at our course offerings, like I mentioned. So there's a lot of things that a calendar impacts. So
will it impact your grading? Is grading going to be the same? How's that going to work as far as grading the kids?
Yeah, so hopefully you'll allow me back on in maybe March, April, sometime around there. I would like to take a whole segment, if I could, to talk about our grading practices and where we've been going. Okay. But for the sake of time, what I'll share with you now is essentially the whole learning process. Sometimes I like to just dial it all the way back and not think about school and grades and all of that, but think about the whole learning process. And I know for myself and probably for you guys, when you're just starting to learn a new skill, it doesn't go so well a lot of the time. I know that
the learning curve,
right? When I was first starting off as a coach, I certainly would not have liked to have been judged on how I was the first week of practice as how I was by the end of the season even. And as a principal or as a teacher, the way that we evaluate our teachers right now is the whole picture. And so if they have some struggles early on and they're missing some components, we pull them in and we work with them on it and we begin to develop those, and then we reevaluate again and follow up. And then by the end of the year, we look at a whole picture of growth and we see, yeah, this is where this teacher is at in their mastery of being able to teach. But yet, traditionally with the students, we've held their grade accountable to what they did in the first 2 weeks, and it really doesn't make sense when you step back and think about it. That a student, they're walking into Algebra 1, they don't know Algebra 1. That's why they're in the class, and whatever grade they got on that first test, if that's cemented in there and it's staying there, and then the whole rest of the semester you spit a grade out at the end, and that first grade on that first test counts just as much as the last test did, when they might have very well know it now. And so that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of what I would like to present and explain. So there's grading impacts everything. It impacts what lessons the teachers are preparing. It impacts what type of assessments they're giving. It impacts everything. But what I will tell you, and I'll come full circle here to relate it back to the calendar, is in all of our studies that we've had teams been looking at this for over a year and a half now. In all of our studies and all of our school visits and everything that we have looked at related to grading, the number one thing that keeps coming up that schools and everything is telling us you must have in place is an effective ReTeach program. And it's because of that reason that you have to be able to allow students an opportunity to come in and maybe get some one-on-one help, rework it, try that test again. If they still don't get it, try it again. That's the learning process that we all go through in our everyday lives. And we want to be able to bring that into the school environment and not be so bound by all the minutes and everything else. And so what this calendar does is it opens up these Fridays for us to not be bound by having all students have to be in Algebra 1 first period, and then the second period they go to choir, and third period. It doesn't. Fridays we can open it up, and we can invite students to get in where they fit in. If they need help in English, they can go to their English teacher. If they need extra help in math, they can go to their math teacher. Maybe they already get it, and they're a student that wants more. They're bored in class. They're wanting more. We'll have enrichment opportunities in the arts or in PE or even in their core subjects where they can come in and maybe help others. It really does open the door for lots of opportunities on these Fridays that we're not bound by making kids be in certain periods at certain times, and can give them that opportunity to get the much needed reteach to prove that now they know it. And so now we can assess that.
So I remember when I was young and taking classes and I felt like I needed a little extra help, I had to go find a tutor. I had to either pay for that, or if it was offered, maybe on college level, a lot of times it's offered. So what you're telling me is those of our children who need that extra help are going to be able to come in on a Friday, and they're going to be able to go to that specific class or that specific subject and receive some extra tutoring / help / work on the test or whatever. And I hope that our intention is that that's really invaluable to them.
Yep.
What's it going to look like for the teachers?
Okay, can I touch
obviously
again
they're
on?
I was going to say, obviously the teachers are going to be doing that mentoring, that tutoring, and helping. Aside from that, how's it going to look? But go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that to get as specific as I can at this point. Like I said, we just got final word that we're going with the 4-day, and so now we'll be really. So I don't want to speak
Fridays
in advance of what we're doing, but I can tell you that yes, 100%, there absolutely will be students at our site every Friday, unless it's the ones that were no students and it was just staff.
Yeah, there are a few.
There are a few select Fridays of those, but on the typical Fridays, we will be running a ReTeach schedule of sorts. Where students will have the opportunity to be transported in. We will have food options available for them there. We will have, I would say at minimum a 3-hour opportunity for students to receive ReTeach on the Fridays. And now the specifics of what that looks like, on what classes and how long they're in each class and everything, that's what our teams are gonna filter through. But certainly any student, we want to frame it so that any student who needs any help at all can get it. That they can come in on those Fridays and they can get it. And the other thing that you had mentioned, it made me think of this. You talked about needing to get a tutor and things of that nature. Right now, in order to use like NHS students or other advanced level students, we've been trying to give them assignments to be in classes, which has helped. But this opportunity can help us even more, because you think about it, at the high school level, these kids have their own classes. And so they can't be helping a student on their math when they have their own classes to go to. And so these Fridays really open up all of that we can really get some systematic ways of getting tutors available on those Fridays as well.
Great.
So let me answer your question about the teachers. At the secondary level, I know from the teachers I've talked with, obviously any teacher would love to have more time in planning it and that piece. So don't get me wrong there. But at the secondary level, it really is, we need to have the students in the seat in front of us as much as possible. And what the Fridays allows us is to work exactly who is sitting in the seat in front of us at those times. There may be students that don't need it, and so they can stay home. But for the staff, we still will be able to work in more opportunities for professional learning communities and just personal planning time on those Fridays. Because like I mentioned, I could see a 3-hour ReTeach window there. So you could see, that still is significantly shorter than our Fridays are currently. And so that opens up another 2-hour, 1 to 2 hours every Friday where there's no kids ever, that can be designated just for their different personal planning time or their PLC time. And then, certainly in the afternoons we can do different staff meetings on Fridays when the teachers are still there. But yeah, it opens a lot of that up. So we can still fit in both these goals that Shad had shared with professional time for staff and increasing that student achievement piece.
So I'm really excited about seeing how this comes together, because each site, I think, will be a little bit different. They'll be able to tailor make it for their own specific needs and the needs of their children. I'm really looking forward to that. Shad, I don't want to miss anything. If you had any thoughts as we were visiting, anything to add to this before we end?
No, I just think it's an opportunity for us. As you said, it's going to be individualized by site. really to meet those kids' needs where they are. It's different for a first grader than it is for a 12th grader. And I'm excited to watch these plans develop as the administrative teams go back to their sites and begin to work on the task that's in front of them. And it'll be nice to see what comes out in March.
Are they going to need longer than March to get it pinned down, you think?
There are probably some minute and finer details that'll need longer than that, but I think the overall picture
The skeleton
picture will be pretty well formed by March.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much for coming on. I know this is kind of a big deal for the community. We've gone to great lengths to really tie our community to our schools and make them the same, and so this 4-day week will be a difference, and we're hoping a positive for the community and for the kids, most of all for the kids and their academic development, along with our teachers and their professional development. So I'm glad you guys came. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll visit more about this, and I'll take you up on your offer. All right? Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here on the School Zone, and we'll see you again soon.